This is Claim Your Potential, the Empowerment Podcast. I'm Sophie Lindberg, your host and the Executive Director of Claim Your Potential. Get ready to embark on a transformative journey where we empower women and girls to unlock their full potential in every aspect of life. It's time to claim your potential and step into a life of empowerment. Tune in every Tuesday as we ignite your inner strength, provide actionable insights, and empower you to achieve greatness. So, are you ready to claim your potential? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Claim Your Potential, the Empowerment Podcast. I'm your host, Sophie, and today I'm joined by Alexandra Stark to discuss an insightful topic of burnout among young working mothers. With a rich background in coaching and a deep resonance with the challenges faced by high-achieving women, especially those juggling executive leadership roles and business ownership, Alex brings a fresh and distinct perspective to the conversation. Beyond her coaching expertise, Alex is also a licensed mental health psychotherapist with an active practice spanning 3 states. Drawing from over a decade of executive level leadership within a nonprofit where her focus was on education and mental health, Alex also possesses an intimate understanding of the very pressures that often lead to burnout, especially for dedicated working moms. Please welcome Alexandra Stark. Thank you so much for being with us today, Alexandra.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It is a pleasure to have you on. And I would love to start our episode hearing a little bit about your journey. What made you want to get into coaching? And then you also have your mental health practice. So I'm really curious what that journey was like for you.
Sure. So I started my career as in nonprofit and was there for about 10 years and kind of worked my way up in that nonprofit to an executive level leadership role and really found that I enjoyed and loved being in that role so much. I learned a lot. And the organization that I worked with was specifically catering to adolescent girls and young women through empowerment and coaching, education, and mental health. And I just thought it was such a fantastic mission and really learned during that time that a lot of the women that I worked with, kind of around my age were starting the families and having kids. And so it was then that I realized that, being a mom in a leadership role with kids was, definitely sparked some challenges just from a, kind of time perspective and, making sure to do both things really well. So when I left that role, I jumped into private practice. I had been a licensed therapist the whole time I was in nonprofit, but had never done private practice. Jumped into private practice working specifically with moms, working moms, high achieving moms in leadership roles who were feeling lots of stress, anxiety, guilt, really had worked so hard to get where they were in their career, but then also felt that the pressures of motherhood and career combined were just too much. So they were coming into the therapy space, really wanting to work through those things, which ended up really turning out to be burnout. So when we figured that out and I started to see that pattern come through my therapy space more frequently, I started, thinking that there has to be a way to kind of help more women and be of a bigger impact rather than just in the therapy space. So then I created the coaching program through a different business to specifically use a hybrid model, executive coaching and burnout prevention and recovery model to help women who are in working moms in leadership roles who want to do both and who are great at both and just need some support in really managing what that looks like.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you understood that struggle. And so, as someone who understands the challenges of juggling career and family, I know that you mentioned what motivated you, but what is that aha moment? Or I know that we all have that. Maybe it's someone that came into our life, but what was that aha moment for you where you really decided that executive burnout coaching, specifically aimed at helping those young working moms avoid burnout, was the path for you?
Well, I think it was probably part of my own, personal journey when I was feeling just kind of overwhelmed with all, running the business. I have 2 little girls, just kind of managing, just life in general. And I started thinking about, maybe I need to go talk to a career coach, which I did. And through my time with the career coach, we started kind of talking about, what is it that you really what's kind of the barrier here? Is it time? Is it the work itself? Is it finances? And through that time with her, really recognized that it wasn't that I disliked my profession, because I actually really love it and have been doing it for a long time, but needed something a little bit different and a little bit newer for me. And so, with the addition of the coaching piece, it was actually a suggestion that was made by a coach to look into being a coach. So it was really through that I kind of was like, oh, this makes a whole lot of sense for me. I think this would make sense, and I think this would be a really great next step.
Absolutely. That's so fascinating to hear that a coach told you to go down the road of coaching. I think that's kind of a fun full circle moment
I
there.
know.
And for our listeners, to provide a bit of context for them, when we talk about burnout, how do you see burnout manifest, especially among young working moms?
Sure. So burnout looks like pure physical, mental exhaustion. The term burnout really is specifically related to career and work, although sometimes it's used more casually, mom burnout or in other ways. But in this context, it's actually classified by the World Health Organization as a syndrome. So it's not a full diagnosis. It's not a mental health diagnosis or a physical diagnosis, but it is an indicator that some people can go to the doctor for. It can be coded. And that was a really big deal that happened for the world of burnout, because it's now being recognized and validated. It looks like exhaustion, disconnection with family and friends, sometimes weight fluctuations. It looks like feeling dread, just a sheer sense of dread when you have to go to work. It looks like just not being able to focus, not being able to concentrate, brain fog, feeling like you just cannot detach from work, constantly, checking emails, messages, always being on, always being available. By the end of the day, when you're done with work, just you don't have the capacity to do anything else in your life. So, not really a whole lot to do with personal life, relationships, spouse, even kids. So it's a hugely impactful experience that most people have a hard time recognizing at first. Sometimes they don't know what it is, or they think they just hate their job, or they think they're depressed or have anxiety. So it does kind of sometimes take a while, and typically it's cyclical. So you may go through a period of burnout and then think, okay, I need a vacation, and then you take your vacation and you kind of feel better while you're on your vacation, and come back and kind of experience a similar thing 3 months later.
Yeah, and for young working moms that are experiencing burnout, what are some perhaps practical tips that they can really employ to recognize and address burnout before it takes that massive toll on their well-being and professional performance?
Sure, that's a great question. And I feel like the prevention piece is key. I work with women who both are in the recovery timeline, but also women who just want to prevent it. They know about it, they've kind of seen a little bit of it popping up in their lives, and they're ready to kind of tackle it before it becomes, a really chronic concern, a chronic issue. So, some strategies I would recommend would be setting really strong and healthy boundaries with your work. Really starting that process by recognizing your own value system, your own core beliefs, and kind of the priorities that you have set in your life as a whole. Sometimes burnout prevention focuses too much on the tangibles and the to dos. Then that needs to happen as well, but that needs to be secondary. The primary piece of this is kind of looking more internally with, your own value system, how your values relate to your work, your core beliefs as far as how they relate to work and home, how what you want your life to look like. And then from there, manage the tangible pieces like strong, healthy boundaries, learning how to be an assertive and clear communicator, learning the power of no, how to say no, in a way that makes sense for you and your work life. Also, I like to use the term overall wellness rather than just self care. I feel like self care kind of became a buzzword, and it has, some mismeanings, but really just looking at your overall wellness and well being as a whole rather than just a tiny part of, self care. So having self compassion, also mindfulness, meditation is really huge. Understanding the practice of being mindful and present and living in the here and now rather than what's going to happen tomorrow or yesterday is a really helpful tool.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that prevention piece, how a lot of it is about prevention rather than treating the symptom, so to speak. And I feel like a lot of what contributes to this burnout is this desire to be perfect. And so,
Mhm.
how do you guide your clients, especially those young working moms that are trying to juggle it all? How do you guide them in letting go of perfectionism and really embracing a more sustainable approach to managing their responsibilities?
I love that you mentioned that, Sophie, that perfectionism piece, because that's so spot on. A lot of times women will have a piece or a little, nod to perfectionism. Also see a lot of guilt, people pleasing, that kind of all goes in the same category, right? So perfectionism is typically bred in earlier years through, how you receive and respond to personal achievements and accolades. And a lot of times we learn as younger people and also young working moms that we get a lot of accolades in the workspace, but maybe not so much at home. I mean, anyone who's raised, a toddler or a young baby, they're not walking around thanking you all the time for your efforts in parenting, right? So we see a lot of, the workspace is where a lot of times like young working moms will get, the, hey, wow, that's a really wonderful presentation or good job on that, budget report, or you did an excellent job with the board of directors today. So that's where they kind of derive their success and their value. So they kind of bolster that in their perfectionism and try to do all of those things to be perfect at work to receive, the internal validation that maybe they aren't getting in other places in their lives. So in order to kind of combat that, we learn a lot about how to derive personal and internal validation through other areas of your life, finding things in your life that maybe, someone isn't saying great job on this report, but even something like seeing your child, use a skill that you've taught them. Even little small things like seeing, your little one learn how to tie their shoes, or seeing them get, a glass of water by themselves before you have to get it for them. Or it's even things like sleeping through the night. So these are all skills that we don't think about as, deriving personal success and accolades. But if we can kind of swing the pendulum a little bit more to finding that joy and that personal satisfaction from other things in life besides work, it typically will reduce that need to feel that perfectionism in the workplace.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. The As you were speaking, I was thinking back to just the amount of times that I have felt that overwhelming sense of I need to be perfect. I need to make sure that everything I'm doing is making other people around me happy, that the work I'm doing is perfect and that no one is like everyone is, happy with me and
Hmm.
everyone, and it's that, very strong sense of, as you said, people pleasing and perfectionism. And so it's wonderful to hear those strategies there because I know that's definitely pieces that I need to start
Hmm.
employing. And definitely, I love that piece of, finding ways to appreciate others, especially other women. I think that's something that we as women sometimes forget to do.
Right.
It's almost like we have our blinders on where it's, I gotta work, I gotta work, I gotta work. I can't focus on anything else right now. I want to have that professional success. And
Hmm.
we don't take the time to take those blinders off and go, wait a second, there's other women around me that are probably struggling with this too. And so maybe just that small comment of, great job with that expense report, or great job with presenting to the board today, or you know what, I know there's been a lot going on, you're doing great. Just those bits of encouragement I feel like are so helpful. And I know that when I get that, I feel so empowered, I feel so happy, I feel so motivated to keep going because it's that sense of someone's recognizing the work that I'm doing.
Hmm.
Yeah, and as we're talking about burnout, I think something that's going through my mind is I feel like a lot of the time burnout can really creep up on us without
Hmm.
us realizing it. And so, are there any early warning signs or red flags that we should be mindful of to really proactively address, burnout before it happens? Kind of going back to that prevention rather than symptom.
Yes, there are really like you said, a ton of warning signs, but a lot of times we don't know what to look for, right? Sometimes we think, as working moms, well, this is just what I signed up for, or this is just kind of my life, or yeah, I'm a working mom and I have two kids or one kid or whatever, and it's just this is it, right? Like this is my life. So a lot of times we just think that that's the way it's supposed to be, and so it takes a little bit longer to recognize. But if we know what to look for, then definitely that prevention route is going to be huge. So you're just going to want to look for, there's a couple things. So physical symptoms you might see, like I mentioned before, it's just like kind of sheer exhaustion, not just like, oh, I've had a rough day and I'm tired, but just that sheer exhaustion that maybe used to show up in your life like once a month, but now you're feeling it every single day. You're coming home and you're just crashing. You can't even fathom, cooking dinner and doing the laundry and playing with your kids. It just, you just kind of sit around, and a lot of times there's some disconnection involved. So we'll see women kind of, sitting on the corner of the couch, like just scrolling on their phone, like while their kids are playing, not because they don't love their kids or don't want to play with their kids, but they're just so exhausted and mentally depleted that they don't have the capacity to engage. A lot of times there's weight fluctuations. So that can be either up or down, and just kind of not really understanding why. Not a whole lot of change like in eating patterns or exercise, but kind of just that body is holding on or losing the weight. Headaches, tension headaches are huge, just inflammation and pain. So that'd be kind of like your physical symptoms. And then, your more emotional symptoms is just like that sheer dread, feeling like maybe more frustrated at work, a task that used to be no big deal, or a task that used to be, kind of something that even if it was challenging, you didn't go home thinking about it. Also, that just feeling frustrated, feeling like you're trapped, like you want to quit your job, like you want to go into a completely different field, even if it's something you've been working for 10 years, all of a sudden you hate it and you want to go, I don't know, sell stuff on eBay or like be a greeter at Walmart, like just the escape, like that escape. Like I just need to escape. I need to do something different. Also, some interpersonal stuff can start to happen. Colleagues can start to trigger you. You can start to feel like, oh God, I can't deal with this person. I don't want to be in the same room with them. Just kind of like that, get me out of here. So that would kind of be some minor preventative symptoms that you might look for.
Oh, goodness. I am thinking back to, maybe not that long ago, actually. Definitely something that I have just gone through where I had that just immense dread of coming to work. It was like I played through my mind, okay, how can I get out of this job? I want to get out of this job. I don't like being in this job. I don't like
Mhm.
my supervisor. I just don't want to be around them. And it was a lot of that playing through my head, and so I'm thinking back on it, and I'm now realizing, "Oh, man, that was burnout." That
Yes.
was just complete exhaustion and just, an overwhelming amount of work thrown my way that I took on at one time, and it just manifested in this extreme burnout, and it
Yes.
definitely did not play out well.
Right. Right. Did you know at the time that that's what you were experiencing?
No, I just thought that there was something really wrong with I mean, I kind of pinned it all on my supervisor. I was a little like, "Oh, this my supervisor isn't very good. I don't feel very supported." I would nitpick everything that was wrong with them, and granted, there were bits and pieces that, were maybe not their strong suit in terms of management, but it definitely wasn't at the extreme that I was playing it through in my head. Same thing with my workload. I was over exaggerating the amount of work that I had to do, and I was over exaggerating the stress that each project would give me. And then looking back on it, just writing down everything I was doing, I'm kind of like, "Oh, that actually wasn't that much work now that I read it out loud."
Right.
Oh.
Right. And that's such I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's another really important thing to note. Is a lot of times, I mean, granted, yes, there are some times that there are toxic work environments that you just can't fix. But a lot of times burnout stems from the way that we approach our work instead of the work itself. So you'll sometimes find people who kind of like job hop, and they've been in, all these different jobs, and they keep experiencing the same thing. And that's why burnout really, needs to be kind of taken care of from the inside out. So it could be that you determine at the end of your burnout journey that the job isn't the job for you, but most times it's us and how we approach our work than the actual work. That's the problem.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a couple people that I know that shift jobs quite frequently. And it wasn't until I spent a lot of time with them in their environment, in their working environment, watching them work, that I realized the reason why I think that they were shifting so often was because of that burnout element, where they
Mhm,
were just getting so burned out so quickly that it did become a nitpicking of here's everything wrong with this job. I feel like I'm not appreciated. I feel like
mhm,
this, I feel like that, which of course, again, as you said, there are those environments, but sometimes when we are so burnt out, we do find all the bad in a
mhm,
workplace, and we over
mhm,
exaggerate the bad sometimes in the workplace. And that, of course, I would assume that it would cause us to job hop quite a bit. And so that's great to know there, because now I'm also understanding how I, as someone seeing that happen, could perhaps better support that person,
mhm.
now knowing it's likely burnout. Not that you hate your job, it's we need to find a way to perhaps get you to de-stress a bit and to take a
Yes.
step back and to take some
Mhm.
time off.
Right. And usually those things are self-imposed, right? It's a lot of times the job isn't saying you have to answer your email at 10 p.m. Right? You have to come in on the Sunday to finish that. It's usually how we approach it and how, it's self-imposed. So kind of like learning those skills and strategies to come through that, still do a great job at your job. It's just going to look a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to tie everything together for us here with what is one thing that our listeners should take away? And perhaps more specifically, what is one thing that our young women who are those working moms should take away from this episode?
I would say that the number one thing for young working moms is to really recognize and understand that they have a lot more power and control over their lives than they might think that they do. And that you can be an excellent parent and an excellent professional. You don't have to choose. You can do both very, very well, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I love that. I think that's such a great tie in to everything that we've talked about today. And for all of our listeners that do not want to stop hearing your amazing wisdom, because I know that I'm definitely walking away with a better understanding of how I can recognize my own burnout, how I can recognize the burnout in others, and really the different strategies that I can employ to help prevent that. For our listeners that would love to hear more from you, how can they get in touch with you?
They can contact me by email. It's alex@alexstarkcoaching.com. I also on Instagram at Talk to Alex Stark. And I do have a private free Facebook group where I offer lots of free trainings, resources, guides, and it's all dedicated to moms in leadership roles. And that can be found on Facebook as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I will have all of those links in the description box for all of our episode listeners. So definitely go give that a look and, feel free to reach out to Alexandra. And thank you so much, Alexandra, for coming on to the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Hey, thanks so much, Sophie. It was nice talking with you.
That brings us to the end of another empowering episode on Claim Your Potential, the Empowerment Podcast. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed our show and want to learn more about the work we do, you can visit our website, claimyourpotential.org. There, you can access our tools and workbooks, sign up for workshops, join our mentorship program, listen to previous and future episodes, donate to support our cause, and find out how you can get involved. For even more inspiring content, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Claim Potential, where we share inspiration, educational resources, episode and program announcements, and other content designed to help you reach your full potential. Your support means the world to us, and a free way to support our show is by leaving a rating and review on the podcast streaming platform of your choice. Your feedback helps us grow and reach even more people with our empowering message. If you're unsure of how to do this, head over to our website's Leave a Review page for step-by-step instructions. Thank you to each and every one of you for being a part of this empowering community. Tune in next time as we continue our journey of learning and discover even more ways to claim your potential. Until then, remember that you have the power to create the life you desire. Keep striving and keep growing.